There is a specific kind of frustration that only a broken subway can produce. Not road rage, not airline delays, something more personal than those. Because when you take the subway, you gave up. You made a deal. You surrendered your car, your schedule, your personal space, your ability to leave when you want. You handed all of that over to a system and said, "I trust you. Get me there." And then the system doesn't. The train doesn't come. Or it comes and stops underground for 18 minutes with no explanation. Or the platform floods. Or the escalator that has been broken since 2019 is still broken. And you stand there, underground, in the dark, with nowhere to go. And you feel something that is not quite anger and not quite helplessness. Something in between. Something that only a bad subway can make you feel. America has subway systems in 10 cities. Most of them have problems. Some of those problems are old. Some are getting worse. And a few of them are in a state that is genuinely hard to defend. Today we're counting down the 10 worst subway systems in the United States. Not the smallest, not the ones that never tried, the ones that exist, that serve real riders, and that consistently, reliably fail the people who depend on them. Let's start with a system that most people outside its city have never thought about, but that its riders think about every single day. Number 10. PATH. Port Authority, Trans-Hudson, New Jersey, and New York. PATH is 13.8 miles of track connecting Newark, Hoboken, and Jersey City to lower and midtown Manhattan through cast iron tunnels that rest on a bed of silt on the floor of the Hudson River. Those tunnels were built in 1908. They are still in use. Every single weekday, 213,000 people ride through them. PATH is run by the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, which also runs JFK, LaGuardia, Newark Airport, the George Washington Bridge, and the Holland and Lincoln tunnels. PATH gets the attention you would expect from an agency with that much on its plate. The system has 13 stations. The entire network could fit inside a single borough of New York City with room to spare. And yet expansion has been discussed, debated, planned, and not built for decades. The Gateway Project, which would add new rail tunnels under the Hudson, has been in some phase of planning since the 1990s. The existing tunnels flooded completely during Hurricane Sandy in 2012 and took months to restore. The infrastructure is old, the footprint is tiny, and any meaningful investment requires agreement between two states, the federal government, and a port authority with competing priorities on every side. 13 stations, 118 years old, still running, still crowded, still waiting for the investment that has been coming for decades. And if a system defined by its smallness and its age sounds frustrating, the next one is larger, better funded, and still managing to disappoint. Number 9. SEPTA Metro, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Philadelphia has one of the oldest subway systems in the Western Hemisphere. The Market-Frankford Line, the L, opened in 1907. It still runs, and in 2025, it still shows its age in ways that are hard to miss. SEPTA carries 65 million rides a year across 3 subway and elevated lines, connecting neighborhoods that have no other viable transit option. It is, in many parts of Philadelphia, the only way people get to work. Philadelphia's transit gets a fraction of the attention, the investment, and the political support that New York and Washington receive. The rolling stock on several lines is old. SEPTA faces persistent funding gaps, and the state of Pennsylvania has historically been reluctant to fund urban transit for a city that much of the state's political establishment views with suspicion. There are riders in Philadelphia who use SEPTA every day because they have no other choice. They are people for whom SEPTA works or nothing works, and the system they depend on is underfunded, aging, and consistently deprioritized. And if underfunding in a city that gets overlooked sounds like a pattern on this list, it is. The next entry takes that pattern and amplifies it. Number 8. MARTA Rail, Atlanta, Georgia. Atlanta is one of the 10 largest metropolitan areas in the United States. It has 6 million people in its metro area, the world's busiest airport, and a self-image as the capital of the American South. And it has a subway system with 38 stations that does not serve most of the city. MARTA Rail carries 30 million riders a year across 4 lines. The system is shaped like a cross, 2 corridors that meet downtown at 5 points, the only transfer point on the entire network. The suburbs surrounding Atlanta, Cobb County, Gwinnett County, Cherokee County, are almost entirely unserved because for decades those counties actively voted against joining MARTA. The result is one of the most car-dependent major metro areas in the world, with a transit system that exists mostly as a way to get to the airport and to sporting events. Outside of rush hour, trains run every 15 minutes on a good day. Single tracking can push that to 30 minutes or more. In 2016, Atlanta voters approved a sales tax to expand MARTA significantly, 29 miles of new light rail, 13 miles of bus rapid transit. In 2025, almost none of it has been built. Now imagine needing to get from the northern suburbs to the airport on a Sunday afternoon. You look at the map, you see the coverage, and you realize you are going to need to drive. And if a system that doesn't cover its city is frustrating, the next one covers its city and is currently facing a collapse that could end it entirely. Number 7. BART. Bay Area Rapid Transit. San Francisco. Bay Area BART connects San Francisco to Oakland to Berkeley to the East Bay suburbs across 131 miles of track, running under the bay through the Trans-Bay Tube. On paper, it is exactly what a regional transit system should be. In practice, in 2025, BART is in crisis. Between November 2023 and November 2025, BART trains were delayed by 10 minutes or more 35,105 times. That is not a typo. 35,000 delays in 2 years, the equivalent of 243 days of lost time. Before the pandemic, fares covered nearly 70% of BART's operating costs. By 2024, that number had fallen to 25%. The Bay Area has the highest remote work rates in the country, and the office commuters who once kept BART solvent simply are not riding anymore. BART has said publicly that without a new funding source, the system faces station closures, 60-minute train frequencies, no weekend service, and potentially no BART service at all. In 2025, BART experienced a series of major service disruptions, smoke events, train failures, unexplained stalls. The agency's response was that the systems were failing in a safe mode. The trains were stopping. They just weren't going anywhere. Now imagine you are at a BART station during one of those smoke events. The train stops underground. The intercom says something muffled, and then nothing moves for 20 minutes while the Bay Area above continues without you. And if a system on the edge of financial extinction is alarming, the next one has already drawn a formal federal intervention. Number 6. Chicago L. Chicago, Illinois. Chicago's L is one of the great transit systems in the world in theory. 102 miles of track, 8 lines, 146 stations, 24-hour service on 2 lines, a system with history, character, and the bones of something genuinely great. The Chicago Transit Authority has faced persistent reliability problems since the pandemic. Driver shortages have forced service cuts on multiple lines. In March 2026, the Federal Transit Administration launched a formal safety management inspection of the CTA, not a routine review, a federal intervention. The FTA concluded that Illinois had not properly leveraged its oversight authority to protect Chicago passengers and transit workers, and ordered 11 corrective actions. The physical state of the infrastructure compounds everything. The L has sections dating to 1892. Maintenance on an aging elevated structure is expensive, disruptive, and never fully caught up with. And service disruptions mean riders miss trains, lose time, and eventually stop riding. Chicago is a city that deserves great transit. The L, at its best, is one of the most effective ways to move through an American city. But at its worst, and its worst has become more common, it is a system the people who depend on it have learned not to fully trust. Now imagine standing on an L platform in February. Wind coming off the lake, your train is listed as 8 minutes away, then 12, then the board resets, and you are still on the platform, in the cold, not knowing when the train is coming. Chicago deserves better. So far, the L isn't delivering it. Number 5. Washington Metro. WMATA, Washington, D.C. Washington Metro is the most beautiful subway system in America. The coffered concrete vault ceilings, the deep stations, the amber lighting, the sense of entering something monumental every time you descend the escalators. When it opened in 1976, it was considered one of the finest transit systems ever built. In 2009, 2 Metro rail trains collided, killing 8 people. In 2015, a train filled with smoke near L'Enfant Plaza. 1 passenger died, dozens were injured. A federal investigation found employees ignoring safety rules, using cell phones on duty, and an out-of-date computer system. The National Transportation Safety Board used a specific phrase in its assessment. WMATA lacked a safety culture, not a bad safety culture, a lack of one. Decades of underfunding left the system with failing equipment, aging rails, and escalators synonymous with unreliability. At one point, WMATA had roughly half its escalators out of service simultaneously. The system went under federal oversight because regulators concluded it could not be trusted to manage safety independently. Things have improved. Crime on the Metro was down more than 30% in 2025, but the Metro still carries the weight of decisions made and not made over decades. a thing that was great, that had everything, and that was not taken care of. Now imagine riding the metro in 2025, descending those beautiful escalators into those beautiful vaulted stations, and knowing the full history of what happened in between. The crashes, the smoke, the oversight, the years of deferred maintenance. The architecture is still magnificent. What fills it has been, for a long time, a failure to match it. Number 4. Boston MBTA, Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority. Boston Subway, the T, is the oldest in the Western Hemisphere. The Tremont Street Subway opened in 1897. 128 years ago, still running. Still, in many of its original sections, using infrastructure that reflects the choices of engineers who were alive when the subway opened. The MBTA carries 101 million riders a year across 3 heavy rail lines plus the Green Line. Boston is built for transit. Its street grid was designed before cars existed. The density is there. The demand is there. The system has not kept up with what the city needs. In 2022, a Red Line train derailed and nearly fell off elevated tracks over the Mystic River. In the same year, a Green Line collision injured dozens. The Federal Transit Administration took over direct safety oversight of the MBTA, a step regulators take only when an agency cannot be trusted to oversee itself. The Green Line became notorious for slow zones, speed restrictions from unsafe track conditions that turned 20-minute trips into 45-minute ordeals. The T was, for a period in 2022 and 2023, operating under so many restrictions that its own published schedules were meaningless. Now, imagine riding the Green Line on a day when you are already running late. The train moves slowly through a slow zone you have long since memorized. You watch the time. You do the math. You already know you are not going to make it. And this is not a bad day. This is the schedule. Number 3. New York City Subway. Specific lines. This entry requires a clarification. The New York City subway system as a whole is not the 3rd worst in America. It carries 1.3 billion trips a year. It runs 24 hours a day. Its best lines, the L, the 7, the G, operate with reliability that most transit systems would envy. But the worst lines in the New York City subway are, by the numbers, among the worst subway experiences in the developed world. And because they are the worst lines in the largest system, the number of people subjected to that experience every day is staggering. The B train, for years, running the most delayed full-length line in New York City. In 2024, it arrived on time 65.1% of the time. 35 out of every 100 B trains were late. The C, the F, and the 2 were not far behind. Entire lines moving through some of the densest neighborhoods in America with on-time performance that would not be acceptable at a regional commuter railroad. Infrastructure and equipment failures account for 31% of all subway delays. Subway car problems nearly tripled in the first half of 2025 compared to the same period in 2024. The oldest cars in the fleet are approaching 50 years old and breaking down under the East River with hundreds of people inside. Now imagine the C train on a Wednesday morning. It is supposed to come every 8 minutes. You wait 15. It arrives packed. It moves 3 stops and holds. The intercom crackles. Train traffic ahead. You look at the time. You think about the day ahead. In New York, this is not a complaint. This is a Tuesday. And if a broken subway in the world's greatest city sounds like a lot, the 2 systems ahead of it are in a different category entirely. Number 2. Miami-Dade Metro Rail. Miami, Florida. Miami is one of the fastest growing major cities in America, a global finance hub and international gateway that ranks as the 2nd worst city in the United States to drive in. The roads are a disaster, the sprawl is immense, and the subway system that was supposed to solve this has 23 stations and 1 line. The Metro Rail opened in 1984 with a promise of 6 expansion corridors. In 2002, Miami-Dade voters approved a dedicated half-penny sales tax specifically to fund that expansion. That tax has generated billions of dollars. In the decade since, exactly 1 extension has been completed, a 2-mile connection to Miami International Airport, while the rest of the money was quietly diverted to cover operating costs instead of building anything new. The North Corridor extension, a 10-mile elevated line meant to open in the 1990s, has been studied, redesigned, and re-estimated for 40 years. In 2025, its projected cost per passenger trip reached $54, more than 6 times the federal threshold for favorable funding ratings. Miami-Dade Transit has also had a federal criminal investigation into money mismanagement and a freeze on federal funds. The people who ride Metrorail daily, largely transit-dependent, lower-income riders with no other option, have been waiting for those 6 corridors since before some of them were born. Now imagine standing on a Metro rail platform in Miami in 2025, knowing that the expansion your city voted and paid for in 2002 still has not been built. You watch the traffic on the expressway below, gridlocked. You think about the North Corridor, the East-West Corridor, all the lines that were supposed to exist by now. Your train arrives, one line, 23 stations, you get on, because there is nothing else. Number 1. The Gap. Every American city without a subway. The worst subway system in America is not a subway system at all. It is the absence of one. Houston, the 4th largest city in the United States. 3 million people in the city proper, 7 million in the metro area. No subway, a light rail system with a single line that cannot begin to serve a metro area larger than Chicago's. Phoenix, larger in land area than Los Angeles. 1.6 million people in the city. No subway, a light rail line currently being defunded. And in 2022, Mesa voted to remove a section that had already been built. Dallas, San Antonio, Jacksonville, Las Vegas, Indianapolis, cities of millions with no subway, no heavy rail rapid transit, no system that can move people the way transit was designed to. The decision made in those cities by generations of politicians and planners and voters was that the car was the answer, and everyone would always be able to afford one. That assumption has never been true. And the people it was never true for, the people who cannot drive, who cannot afford a car, who depend on a bus that comes every hour, if it comes at all, have been paying the price for that assumption every day for 70 years. The worst subway in America is the one in Houston, where it does not exist. It is the one in Phoenix, where it existed and got removed. It is the one in the other half of the country where the argument was made that this was not needed, and the argument won, and millions of people have been stranded by that victory ever since. No delay, no broken escalator, no smoke-filled tunnel, just a city, and no way through it. That is the worst transit failure in America, and it does not have a number to call, or a board of directors to hold accountable, or a federal oversight agency to demand improvements. It has nothing, and nothing, in the end, is the hardest thing to fix. So there you have it, 10 entries, 10 different versions of the same problem. Some systems are old, some are underfunded, some were great and chose not to stay that way. Some are facing a financial cliff that could end them within years, and one is the largest absence in American urban life. The cities of millions who were told that transit was not for them, and who have been living with that answer ever since. They made the deal. They gave the system their trust. Some of those systems are trying to earn it back. Some of them never deserved it in the first place. Thanks for watching.